No help to Pakistan, which harbors terrorists, Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley said. Indian origin Nikki Haley has started her presidential run ahead of the 2024 elections. Cutting foreign aid is one of the key promises she has made to the people of the United States. She cleared her stance that if voted to power, she would not provide any foreign aid to US advisories. In an interview with Fox News, Nikki has now slammed Pakistan for harboring terrorism. Nikki also condemned Biden's government for providing USD 2 billion to Pakistan as foreign aid. You are giving $2 billion to Pakistan, who are harboring terrorists trying to kill our soldiers, Nikki Haley, Republican presidential candidate, said to the Fox News. For years, Pakistan has been questioned for breeding terrorists on their home ground. The current situation of Pakistan is also questionable as the country is reeling under terror attack. TTP, BLA are two of the deadliest terror groups which are continuously attacking Pakistan. Not only Pakistan, but Nikki also slammed Joe Biden for providing foreign aid to China.
Let's bring in Nikki Haley now, former U.S. ambassador to the UN and 2024 Republican presidential candidate, and live here in New York City on set with us. Good to have you.
Great to be here.
This press briefing at the White House took place during our hours here yesterday. We covered it live. And many in this country who have lived through this pandemic might find it shocking to hear John Kirby say this. I'll get your reaction.
The president made trying to find the origins of COVID a priority right when he came into office. And he's got a whole of government effort designed to do that. There is not a consensus right now in the U.S. government about exactly how COVID started. There is just not an intelligence community consensus.
Can you explain that? Why are we still here? No consensus? And how does the U.S. Department of Energy know? But the CIA doesn't know, or there's not a consensus. What is going on here?
Can we at least have a consensus that when COVID broke out, China closed their borders to people coming in and they opened their borders to everybody going out? They wanted everyone else to suffer. I think it came from the lab. I don't think it was malicious. I think it was an accident. It's what they did after that. Can we have consensus that they went to the World Health Organization and asked them to condemn the United States for closing the border? Can we have consensus on the fact that they, to this day, have never been held accountable for how irresponsible it was for them to handle it? That's what we need to be talking about.
If you were sitting in the White House, you were President Biden, how would you respond to China accusing the U.S. in this moment of a smear campaign?
I've dealt with China before. Whenever you call them out, they're very quick to turn the tables. What we need to do is start holding them accountable. Enough talking about what they did. Let's hold them accountable. Let's start focusing on the national security aspects of the supply chain and what we're relying on. Let's start building up our military, because nothing scares China more than that. Let's start telling our universities, you either take Chinese money or you take American money, you don't take both. And let's start really getting our allies together so that we can hold China accountable. The world suffered, and China's yet to pay a price.
And I know that's what you are writing about in your new op-ed. You say, I'll cut the billions in foreign aid we send our enemies. And you lay out your case exactly how you would plan to do that. I'm curious how you believe China would respond to that. If you're elected president, and if you cut off that funding, how would they respond?
It would show China that we have a focus. We give $46 billion in foreign aid, and to countries that say death to America or countries that hate us, we can't buy friends. China would notice that we were paying attention. Why are we giving them money for the environment? It's just ludicrous. We shouldn't be giving them 1 cent. The idea that we give money to Iraq and they're dealing with proxies, Iranian proxies that are saying death to America. The idea that we give it to Zimbabwe and they're the most anti-American African country out there. The idea that we're giving it to Cuba and we labeled them a state sponsor of terror. Why are we doing that? Don't try and buy friends. I started this at the United Nations. I created a book of all 193 countries. The second column was the percentage of times they voted with the U.S. and against. And the third column was the amount foreign aid we gave them. And I gave that to President Trump. And I said, we need to start being smart. We need to start being strategic. He started that by stopping the $2 billion in aid we were giving to Pakistan that were harboring terrorists trying to kill our soldiers. It sends the world a message that we're paying attention. That's the focus of what cutting this foreign aid to our enemies would do.
Meanwhile, back here at home, many voters are wondering if this administration is paying attention to the historic inflation that we're all living through. And there's a lot of smart people, Ambassador, who have been tasked with bringing those prices down. The Federal Reserve, the administration, there are economists coast to coast who are saying, do this, do that. This could fall in your lap if you were elected president. How do you tackle inflation? How do you bring prices down for the American people without inflicting too much pain on them?
Well, I think first look at the fact that Washington, D.C., they're spending like drunken sailors. They need to go on a diet. We need to realize that our federal budget, 15% of that is interest. Quit borrowing money you don't have. Start there. Look at the supply chain and say, why don't we start building more things in America? That's what we did in South Carolina. That's what we can do across this country. And then let's say, okay, what are these other programs that we need to start really taking a look at and focus on that? But start somewhere. The idea that Republicans and Democrats started earmarks again? Really? Are you going to pay $12 million for a baseball stadium in New York when we've got families who can't afford groceries? It's tone deaf.
Fox News polling revealing this about the 2024 presidential Republican nominee preference among Republican primary voters. It's got Donald Trump at 43%, Ron DeSantis 28%, and you, Ambassador Haley, 7%, Mike Pence 7%, Greg Abbott 2%, and Cheney at 2%. What was your response when you saw that? Is that where you thought you were or where you think you are?
We're just getting started. We're just getting started. We had standing room only. Hundreds of people came out in Iowa and New Hampshire. Great progress there. We had thousands show up in South Carolina. People want someone who's going to take this country in a new direction. They don't want the old status quo, and they don't want the drama.
Let me just follow up on that, because this was among Republican primary voters. How do you think you can win over potential Republican voters?
By talking about what real families are going through. My daughter's getting married, and I see how hard it is for her to buy a home. My son is in college, and I see how he's having to write papers he doesn't believe to get an A. We need to go back to the basics on spending, on getting our education back on track and get rid of all this woke stuff that's in there. Close the borders. Make sure that we are starting to have street crime handled again. And look at the foreign policy situation, and don't ever allow Americans to look at the sky and see a Chinese spy balloon looking back at them. It's time for us to get focused. It's time for us to get to work. I did it as governor that took over a hurting state. I did it at the UN and took the kick me sign off of our backs. I'm ready to do it for our country.
All right. Ambassador Haley, really good to have you here today. Thanks so much. We'll be watching all of it. It feels like we're already full. You're full on in already.
That's right. Go to NikkiHaley.com. That's where it's at.
All right.
Thank
Pleasure
you.
to have you here. Thank you so much.